Shabbat Shalom. So wonderful to see all of you. Friends, I don't know if this happens in your family. I hope it doesn't. But in my family, there's a bit of a ritual when I go to my parents' house to visit. It usually happens when we're all having a lovely family meal together at a birthday party or some other holiday. Everyone is enjoying themselves, having a good time. And then at some point, the conversation kind of turns into what I call a roast of Jonathan Hodson. And for a solid 15 minutes, my family, usually led by my mother, talks about, in great specific detail, what a challenging little kid I was. This is apparently the main attraction of the party. My mom will call in people who are in other rooms to say, come over here and listen to stories about how terrible Jonathan was when he was little. If my kids are playing outside, she'll encourage them to come inside the house. She'll say, come on inside, boys, and hear what your daddy put me through. Come on, come on, come on. And you should know that everyone except me absolutely loves this. This is basically my wife's favorite thing. She listens so intently to these stories she's heard a million times. She's on the edge of her seat. She laughs at all the little jokes. And then my mom will say something and my wife will bump me and says, he still does that. And everyone laughs. Ha, 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 ha. Now, I suppose maybe I could shut this down, but this ritual has been a frequent occurrence at my parents' house for literally decades now, and after listening to the stories, I have to admit, I was a little jerk, man. I was terrible. Perhaps this roast of Jonathan Hodson is like saving my mom money on therapy or something. I was just awful. I'll tell you a quick story that is usually featured in a typical roast program, which I'm told happened when I was about 4 years old. My mom loves this one. This is what she leads with. My mom, as she tells it, took me to Walmart, and I was looking at all the toys in the toy aisle. Well, some time went by, and my mom needed to continue her shopping, so she said, okay, Jonathan, it's time to go. And I replied that I was not interested in leaving. So she said again, in a stern voice, Jonathan, it's time to go. And I, again, basically told her to go jump in the lake. After we repeated this interaction for a third time, my mom had had enough, and she went to go grab my hand to lead me the heck out of there, at which point 4-year-old Jonathan started screaming, help, help, you are not my mother. You are not my mother. You are a stranger, stranger danger, help, help. Are you guys enjoying the roast too? Needless to say, this got the attention of a small crowd who gathered in the toy aisle to watch me throw a fit and to witness my poor mother, who was completely horrified. She had to explain to a bunch of strangers that she wasn't abducting me and that she was, in fact, my mother. And I guess the only reason she didn't get arrested that day was because I looked just like her when I was little. Keep in mind, this roast can go on for 15 more minutes. There's more material in these stories. They keep going and going. I feel like one is worse than the next. But after a while, my mom runs out of steam, and the way the roast used to end before I had kids was my mother would point to me and say, quote, and I hope that one day you have a son just like you. Every time she would say this, it was like a dark prophecy or an omen, like she put a curse on me. Dun, dun, dun. Like I said, this went on for years and for years. And for a while there, I thought I had dodged her little curse on me. As I mentioned earlier, I have 3 sons. My eldest son, Josiah, if you know him, he is a Boy Scout. He's a sweet kid, very smart, very polite, totally easy. I was thinking, he got Genevieve's genetics. I got you, Mom. Then my second son, Phineas, while impulsive and a little crazy, is actually pretty obedient as well. So I figured if I had gotten away with dodging this curse twice, I could certainly do it again. But as they say, the third time's a charm. And my youngest, Ezekiel, who is now 4, the same age I was during the Walmart anecdotes, he is now fulfilling my mom's prophecy more than I'd like. This is a true story. The other day while I was sitting in my office, I could hear my son Ezekiel, Zeke, in the hallway of our shul, and he was giving the business to the director of our Heinz preschool, Stacy Dory. I could hear him in my office through multiple walls telling Miss Stacy that he wasn't interested in learning about shapes that day. He had already learned that, and therefore he in fact did not have to participate in pre-K class, and that he could do whatever he wanted. This is what he was explaining to her. By the way, one day I think there'll be a new featured program at my house called The Roast of Ezekiel Hodson, because this guy is likewise pretty challenging, and I'm trying to shut it all down before he ends up even more like me. I'm trying to quell this. That being said, I leave my office and I go into the hallway and I see little Zeke being super aggressive to Stacy, who is so wonderful and who is super patient. And he's pointing at her, this little boy, and he's saying, I don't need to do this. I don't want to do that. But then he turned and saw Dad approaching, and his tune changed pretty darn quick. It's like he saw the angel of death from Chad Gadya, frozen in fear. And all I said to him was, come with me, you're going to take a little break from class. And it looked as if he was being led off to face the firing squad or something. I marched him right into my office, and I put him in timeout, and he was crying and really upset, and I was upset too. And then, you know what this little boy said to me? I am not making this up. I sometimes exaggerate. I'm not this morning. He looked at me and cried out and said, Dad, give me mercy. Now, I have to admit, when he said this, I was completely shocked. I thought I must have misheard something. So I said, what did you say? And sure enough, he repeated the line, give me mercy. Friends, between you and me, I didn't know what to do. I was not expecting this. What was I going to do? On the one hand, he can't get a free pass for chewing out the director of our preschool, who happens to be a friend of mine. But on the other hand, I'm a reasonable guy. When someone cries out for me to show them mercy, especially if they're 4, I suppose I can relent somewhat. So after about 5 minutes in timeout, I let him out of the gulag. I marched him back to class, where he had to apologize to Stacy, and he had to apologize to his teacher. And I went back into my office, and I sat in my chair, and I was very perplexed. And I'd be lying if I told you I hadn't thought about this sentiment all week, especially as we entered into Pesach. You see, friends, the holiday of Passover is really a holiday whose story, whose texts and liturgy is really all about asking for divine mercy. Perhaps it begins with the impetus for the book of Exodus, of Shemot itself, when the Torah tells us that the Jewish people cried out to Hashem under Egyptian oppression, begging God for mercy. And we're told that Hashem, quote, heard their cry. Later in the story, it's Pharaoh who, after being repeatedly pummeled with plagues, begs Moses to ask God for mercy, to stop the frogs which are destroying his kingdom. And he later does this again with hail and then with locusts. But even in our holiday liturgy, I find this notion everywhere. We've been davening Hallel seemingly all week now. We did this morning. And one of the core verses that the Shliach Tzibor sings and that the congregation repeats is the line, Ki le'olam chasto, for God's mercy endures forever. This morning we read from our Torah, and we also repeat this line in the holiday Torah service. We stand in front of the open ark and we recite, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun. Adonai, Adonai, God who is merciful and compassionate. And we don't just say those words, we lean on them. Because when we stand there reciting that sacred formula from the book of Shemot, we are doing something very simple and I think very human. We are saying, or rather, we are proclaiming, God, we need your mercy. Not just our ancestors, not just once upon a time in Egypt, us here, right now. Hashem, we need your mercy. And maybe that's what struck me so deeply about my son Zeke, because no one taught him that line. In all honesty, I have no idea where he got that. Maybe TV, who knows? But certainly no one ever sat him down and said, here's the proper theological language to use when you're in trouble with your rabbi father. It seems like he just felt it. Dad, give me mercy. Friends, I've been thinking about it, and that might have been one of the most honest prayers that I've ever heard. Because if we're being real, every one of us has moments that could make it into our own roast. We come to Passover celebrating freedom, but we also carry all the ways that we've messed up, all the ways that we've fallen short, and yes, all the ways that we've hurt people. And still, we tell the story of our redemption. Why? Because Pesach isn't just about how good we were. It's about how merciful God was and how merciful God is. Our ancestors cried out, and Hashem heard them. Pharaoh begged for relief, and even he received moments of mercy from God. So what do we do with all of this nowadays, in a time and a place where we're not slaves and we're far, far from the land of Egypt? Well, perhaps maybe we can do simply three things. First, we too should ask for God's mercy. Not perfectly, but honestly. Second, we should be willing to give mercy at the Seder table or at shul or even in our most private moments. We should choose patience over being right. And third, we need to build homes for mercy, literally and figuratively. Places where our family and friends can mess up and say, I'm sorry, and we let them try again. Because that's what God models for us over and over and over again. When Zeke said those words, I had a choice. And I did decide to show him a little mercy, but then I still made him go and apologize. And I think that's the balance. Accountability with compassion. And maybe if we live that way, then one day when we need it most, we'll be able to say, Hashem, give me mercy. And God will say, I already have. In conclusion, as for my mom's curse, you know that I hope you have a kid just like you one day. Well, it came true, and I got Zeke, and now I understand that honestly, after raising me, my mom doesn't just believe in God's mercy, she deserves it. Because despite what I said when I was 4, she really is my mother. Thank God. Shabbat Shalom.